This is Defenders TV Podcast, episode 96, where we are looking at Iron Fist, Season 1, Episode 7, Felling Tree with Roots. Welcome back, Defenders, to this episode 96 of Defenders TV Podcast. We're getting close to that 100 mark. And of course, we are felling tree with roots. We are tree surgeons in this episode as we look at Iron Fist Season 1, Episode 7. And wow, bloody gory wow. I am one of your hosts, John.
I'm one of your other hosts, Derek.
And rounding out the group, I'm your one and only other host, Chris.
Absolutely. Where will we go in this podcast? We thought it was going to be a mystical, magical journey of discovery in this episode. We thought we might get a glimpse of the city of Kunlun, but instead we got very much a down-to-earth, raw and bloody episode, which in itself was fantastic. What did you guys think quickly?
Yeah, it was a really, really brutal, violent episode, and I kind of enjoyed it. We kind of talked about at the end of episode 6 that was the last episodes that were put out for screeners. We're now into episode 7. I can see why they didn't want to let this cat out of the bag by releasing these episodes early anywhere, regardless of whether it's press or not. I can kind of see why Netflix didn't want to release episode 7 to the press or to anybody to let this kind of secret out.
And what secret would you be referring to, Derek?
We will talk about it later on because just to let our listeners know, this is obviously our spoiler-filled review of episode 7. If you haven't seen it, it's the bloody one. So if you don't remember what episode number it was, you may not have seen it. Go watch it and come back to us afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Tuesday the 4th of April, and this is our new episode. Just to let the listeners know, as always, we will be releasing episodes every Friday and Tuesday. Our next episode, episode 8 of Iron Fist, will be reviewed and will be aired out on Friday the 7th of April. Of course, please head over to iTunes at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. Please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review if you are so inclined. And of course, you can use any other good podcast catcher for Defenders TV Podcast. Just search the name and we will pop up with dulcet tones.
Absolutely, and what that means is in 2 weeks' time we will have the 100th episode of Defenders TV Podcast. If you want to send us in some feedback at all for our 100th episode, you can email us at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or you can record your thoughts about 90 seconds over on our website, defenderstvpodcast.com.
Absolutely. Remember that you can join the community of our podcast and of the Defenders series over on Netflix. Please just go to Facebook, like our page, join our group. Just search Defenders TV Podcast on Facebook, and of course the @DefendersCast on Twitter.
It's a bit of fun over in the group, isn't it, Chris?
It is, and I'm thinking I'm going to start a new post for when we release this episode, and I want to see what our fellow listeners think. I think we need a nickname. We are the Defenders. Could they be the Defendees?
They could be. They could be.
Or the Defendettes.
The Defendettes.
Or the Defendants.
Or the Defendants.
Yeah.
Or the Accusers.
Maybe.
The Defenders and the fellow Accusers. I don't know. I think we need a nickname for the hundreds that are in the group. What do you want to call yourselves?
I like it.
We'll put a poll together and we'll vote for some top names. And going forward, the Defendees or Defendettes you will have a name and we will refer to you as such.
I like it. For the moment, it is the listeners. Thank you so much for joining us again for this episode. Always great to have you with us for these reviews of Iron Fist on Netflix.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say welcome, Defenders.
That's true.
That's another one to add to the bag. But I think with that, we should start thinking about the defense of this episode of Iron Fist, Episode 7, Felling Tree with Roots. I feel it should be plural, but nonetheless, Felling Tree with Roots it is. Derek, what have you got for us on this episode?
Well, this episode was written by Ian Stokes, well known probably as a writer for Teen Wolf and Warehouse 13. He's done multiple episodes of those shows, but interestingly, he does get 2 episodes of Iron Fist. And unlike most of the other writers on the show that get 2 episodes, they're not back-to-back. He gets episode 11 after episode 7. So a couple episodes' time, we'll get another episode by Ian Stokes. And I'm kind of delighted about that. He's done a really good job with this episode, which we'll go into. The episode was directed by Farron Blackburn. He's well known again in the Defenders universe. He did 2 episodes back in season 1, which we talked about extensively. He's worked on shows like Doctor Who in the past as well. But he did World on Fire, which was episode 5 of season 1 of Daredevil. And he also did Nelson v. Murdoch, which is season 1, episode 10. That wonderful episode as the relationship between Foggy and Matt breaks down even further, I think, towards the end of the season.
I think there was a bit of a relationship breakdown in this episode as well.
I think there was.
A lot more bloody. Yes, and if you dislike dental work, maybe close your ears in the next while.
Yeah. So, John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for Season 1, Episode 7 of Iron Fist, Felling Tree with Roots?
Sure. Harold is in trouble with the Hand as they grow suspicious of his connection with Danny Rand, which is confirmed when Danny arrives at Harold's penthouse while he is being interrogated by 2 Hand operatives. In the aftermath of this bloody encounter, Harold looks to his put-upon son Ward to dispose of the bodies, as their relationship becomes increasingly strained. Elsewhere, relationships look brighter as Danny and Colleen's connection grows closer, just as another man from her past, her martial arts mentor Bakuto, returns with unknown intentions. As Danny starts investigating his father's past at Rand Enterprises, he spots a familiar face, Madame Gao. As he learns of the level of infiltration at Rand Enterprises by the Hand, he persuades Colleen and Hai King Yang and his hatchet men to help them fight the Hand. In an attack on the Hand to rescue Radovan, he reveals to Danny that Gao has departed for Anjou, where Rand's family was flying to 15 years ago. However, another vacation is on the cards as Joy convinces Ward to get away from it all after Danny announces a decision that has serious consequences for their role on the Rand Enterprises board. As Ward is prevented from going on vacation by his father, the pressure and strain of their relationship spills over and runs a deep and angry shade of red.
Covered in red.
Wait, I was going to go with red, red wine. Should we kick off with point 1 then?
I feel we should have Barry White music for the background of this, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely, yes. Point 1 is love is in the dojo.
Absolutely. Colleen gets her fist. It is, I thought, really lovely relationship in this episode. I really, really enjoyed it. You know, like Claire and Matt Murdock have had a bit of a tempestuous kind of relationship. Mm-hmm. Luke Cage and Claire, maybe not. Obviously, with Misty Knight, it wasn't so much, and certainly, you know, a bit angry, if that's your kind of thing, with Jessica Jones. Mm-hmm. This really seemed like they had come together in a really nice kind of way, you know, that it had developed, and this was a natural progression of that development. I think as well, one of the points that we'll bring in later about Bakuto is that ultimately in the same episode, that for me, that natural progression does get undermined slightly about possibly you know, a bit of suspicion on Colleen or, you know, what's going on. But I really like these two getting together. It felt right. It felt like they'd worked through their initial difficulties, differences, or what have you. And I kind of really, really liked this. I think in particular, it was really helped by that kind of electro synth type of music that they had. It really reminded me of Terminator 2, to be honest. And I kind of really enjoyed it. I thought it really lent itself to these scenes, and
this is the kind of Brad Fiedel theme tune to Terminator 2, not the really harsh banging, the lovely synth music that falls underneath the main theme for Terminator 2.
Yeah, exactly. And is used in some of the more tender moments within Terminator 2 where there's a more intimate sort of scene going on.
Right.
So I just thought this was really, really cool.
Chris,
he got his mojo on in the dojo.
I like it. I like it. Chris, what did you think of this?
Mojo in the Dojo. I think I'm going to remember that one. I really enjoyed this. I have to admit, fully and completely. The comic book fan in me kind of had a secondary double take, kind of going, oh, this is where they're going with this, because some of the comic fans know there's a more Misty Knight, Danny Rand love connection.
Yeah.
And we assumed we were going to see that in this.
Well, we did talk about it, and we weren't sure, given the actress that plays Misty Knight hasn't showed up on the show, that it was unlikely that we were going to see that. And we did think there was going to be a relationship here between Colleen and Danny. There's definitely been the setup since this first episode, and it's been building really well. I think to John's point and to your point, Chris, it's a lovely scene because it's not coming out of nowhere. You can tell it's something that's been building up. They have that wonderful moment, bottom of the bed, overnight, chatting and opening up to each other, and then it happens naturally, which is really good to see. Regardless of the fact that it's not the comic book coupling of Misty Knight and Danny, I think it works on the show. Yeah,
and I think that's the main point. I think that's why I didn't. Once that initial shock kind of was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, actually, this makes sense that there's been this flirtatious sub-thread, sub-storyline, subplot, whichever you want to call it, since the beginning. And that's fine. I'm down with that. I think it's a good way of doing it. Mm-hmm. I think what John alluded to more, which is this mentor coming in, which we can get to later on.
I think we might as well get to that point now. Both of you mentioned it, so we might as well get into it. It's not a huge point, but it is a huge moment, or could be a huge moment for the series, really. Yeah, Chris?
Yeah, so we get this introduction of Colleen's potential, or what we assume to be one of her main mentors in the Bushido, Bakuto. And there's this... The way they discuss it makes it seem like she was given a task of getting close to Danny.
Yeah, absolutely.
At some point. And that then straight away undermines this potential love story that they've already got. And you're like, okay, was she doing it just to get close to him? Does she actually care for him? Why is she being told to get close to him and get friendly with him? Why is she told to report back to Bakuto about this? Straight away, I want to know more.
Yes.
The typical Netflix thing, which is like, mid-episode, oh, here's a really salacious piece of information. Oh, wait, no, we're not going to talk about that for another episode.
Yeah.
You just remember this point now, and we'll get back to it in a while.
Absolutely.
But this does make me wonder, actually, maybe this isn't budding love in the dojo. Maybe this is straight away, this was a tarred tryst that will cause Danny to turn against Colleen almost, and she used him and abused him, and now that's an issue.
I really hope not, because I do think that scene played really well. It played really naturally as well. So, and considering the first 3 or 4 episodes, until Colleen saw the power and saw Danny leading her, it felt like she was really staying out of his reach and trying to push him away quite heavily, and not a pushing him away but going, you can still stay kind of thing. He was really forcing himself to be involved in her life because she's his only friend. So it kind of would feel like a really weird thing if she was actually doing that on purpose, if you know what I mean. It feels like she would have been trying way too hard to push him away if her task was to get him close.
It was one line where Bakuto, her mentor, says, keep up what you're doing. Yeah. And it was that line really that kind of just, raised the shackles. It's kind of like, what does he mean by that? Because that sounds as though there's some kind of predetermined plan, that there's been a bit of subterfuge kind of going on by that. I think even as well, he's talking about the Iron Fist here as well, quite openly with her.
Yeah.
Now, we don't see that conversation, but I assume that she has said this to him, but you never know. It seems Bakuto is very familiar with this. He certainly doesn't seem surprised by it. Ultimately, the question has to be asked here as to whether this guy, he's obviously a skilled martial artist and teacher, taught Colleen, is this possibly Davos under a different name. You know, the conversation about the Iron Fist and about Danny Rand seems to be very familiar for him. He doesn't seem too fazed by these kind of conversations. And I think ultimately, though, what the other great thing is for me, that there's two aspects. Is that, you know, is Colleen in cahoots with this guy, and this line of keep up what you're doing has maybe more sinister connotations to it? And secondly, if not, and this guy does come out to be Davos, then, you know, this puts Colleen into a really nice little quandary. There's going to be a conflict there. You know, she obviously has great respect for this mentor as to what he's taught her, and yet she's also then actually genuinely, you know, has fallen for Danny Rand.
Yeah.
And so that decision time where she's got to make a choice will rapidly approach if this mentor, Bakuto, is in fact Davos. And I think that's really, really good. So, like, not only does it, in the episode, you know, just raise a question about that whole love scene or the increasing connection in their relationship, but you know that later on, you know, if it is all genuine, then she is going to have a right old quandary and a decision to make as to who she ultimately plumps for.
Remember, listeners, if you missed it on a previous episode, in the show, Davos is a childhood friend of Danny. He's someone that grew up with him in Kunlun. Danny has mentioned him a few times, that he is one of his friends. They used to pal around together while they were in Kunlun. So we haven't seen him yet, and we don't know who he is. Bakuto is a character from the comic books, a very minor character within the comic books, only had a few issues over time. We're not going to go into his backstory either, because we don't want to colour the TV show by something that may have happened in the comic books that may not play out on the show. But yeah, it's quite interesting that it's a possibility here that this could be another big bad for the show. We're on episode 7, and that's kind of well known as the territory where you start to see the big bads appearing through the shows, particularly in things like Luke Cage, where that's where the big bad suddenly emerged on the show. So very interesting to see what happens with that character. It is possible, of course, that Colleen was turning to him as a friend and going, I'm going out with this guy Danny Rand. He's saying he's the Iron Fist, and Bakuto just happens to know who that is and goes, don't worry, you're fine, you're safe. Just keep doing what you're doing and you'll be okay. It could be just as simple as that, but I do think, like John, I do think there's a bit more of a nefarious reason behind his interest in Iron Fist.
Yeah, he's definitely a mysterious mentor at this stage.
I think if it does turn out to be just as you said, that kind of Colleen was just confiding in him, they were just friends, etc., that would be a low payoff,
right,
for what I believe they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. But we've been assuming over the last couple of episodes that, and the podcast in particular, that we will get a secondary big bad, someone above Madame Gao. I'm wondering if, yes, this is this range, this is the time, episode 7, episode 8, 9, when they start introducing the secondary character as the big bad, the enemy. We've seen it in other shows.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, would they use that same thing? It's almost like we've seen it been done before. We've seen it been done with Luke Cage. Mm-hmm. So would they do the exact same thing again? A question not. There, kind of going, well, since there has been crossover, but actually more with Iron Fist, the crossover from a writing perspective is more Jessica Jones and Daredevil. Uh-huh. Particularly they're the ones we know. We haven't yet seen a crossover with Luke Cage, and I'm not sure that potentially there is later on. We just haven't got to it. But that would potentially mean that, yes, these guys may have done the same kind of plot point, but not seen it as an issue because it wasn't the last thing that they wrote.
Yeah, and again, it's going to be a very different show anyway, regardless. I suppose the bad guy that was in Luke Cage was very different from episode 7 onwards than just even this one scene that we see with Bakuto tells me he's not going to be like Diamondback. So.
But we hope.
Well, some people do.
He gets a shiny new suit at the end
some
of the
people
episode.
Do. This also could be the character's name. This character could just be Bakuto.
Absolutely.
From the comic books. That could be his introduction right there, and we'll learn more about him in the next episode. Absolutely. But But yeah, it's interesting to speculate about these things when you see a character come on board with a history of the character you've watched for 7 episodes and suddenly potentially changes your opinion of that character from just a couple of lines. It's really interesting.
Absolutely. I think with that, we can move on from speculation to pure, brutal fact. And this is the dental work that Harold Meacham meets out with, well, a very indelicate type of dental tool, a regular hardware hammer, in
Absolutely.
fact. This was something, and in fact, this whole episode to some extent, in terms of these physical, violent scenes, really reminded me of Daredevil season 1 and season 2, where they had similar scenes. This was no hold bars, really, in that viewing of the violence. And I mean, here we see Harold going at the face of these 2 hand operatives that have come to discipline him effectively for suspicious behavior and reckless behavior as the Hand sees it. We have a great scene where, it's like ding, and out comes Danny Rand, and then there's the big fight, and it's not just the fight, but it's the cleanup afterwards with Harold effectively caving in someone's teeth so that he can not be identified from his dental records. Really, you see it. Yeah, you see it all.
That was really brutal.
I'm not going to the dentist in probably the next 5 years, just in case I have a Harold Meacham dentist.
Absolutely. I do find it really interesting that one of our listeners compared Ward Meacham to the character from American Psycho a couple of episodes ago in one of our pieces of feedback. Because as my dad used to say, it's not off the road he licked it. It's Harold Meacham that is a brutally violent American Psycho, as we see in this scene. As Ward comes into the place, he finds out that not only is Harold taking out the teeth and the face of these two guys with a hammer, he's also cut off his own finger and thrown it in the bin, which he calls a kitchen accident to Ward. Harold's pretty brutal in this episode and willing to do anything to get away from Madame Gao. And to me, that is the American Psycho. So it does kind of speak to what happens later on in the episode. If you're like that, possibility a member of your family might also turn out like that.
Yeah, it's literally, it's hammer time. I mean, the other great thing from this scene was just Ward's reaction. He's coming across to his dad's penthouse thinking, what does he want me to do now? It must be something at Rand Industries. And there he is, knocking the shit out of someone's face, and he's gagging. And of course, he goes to throw up in the bin, and there's this finger.
Yeah.
Now that would have made me throw up. I was surprised he didn't actually throw up. He managed to stifle it.
Yeah, I think it was just too much for him to even get to the point of throwing up. I think he just experienced so much in those 5 seconds that his body can't even react anymore.
I both loved and hated this scene.
Okay.
For a number of reasons. One, okay, so when Danny walks in, that's a great piece.
It's hilarious. Yeah.
It's hilarious. He's like,
I don't know anything about Danny Rand. Ding! As he arrives.
Absolutely priceless.
Oh. And then there's great quick fight scene. Mm-hmm. Again, Danny has an issue with this guy from the Hand, but I think I'm now assuming that once you become an operative of the Hand, you are more high powered than a low level thug, and it takes Danny a bit of work to take down one person.
And remember, he's just come back from his grand test, so he's literally just come back after being beaten upon for quite a long time, and says he can't use his chi. He needs time to repower himself.
Yeah, so, I wondered whether he had a battery recharge symbol at this point.
He's like, oh no, my Iron Fist is just at 30%.
But it definitely, I put it down to the fact that he had used all his chi up in fighting the 3 challengers from the previous episode.
Yeah, it's hard to know the rules on it, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then what we get, what the point of the hammer time, as we're now coming to call it, for me, I think it was also too reminiscent. I think because our listener had pointed out the American Psycho bit to me, and when we have Ward and Harold there, and it just stuck in my head then. In that scene, just kind of, who was it? Christian Bale just kind of jumping around his apartment in his see-through plastic suit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what it reminded me of. It just hit so straight home, and it became almost, they were trying to go for horrifying, I believe, but it kind of got me to almost comic.
Okay.
And I don't know. I think this was purely me. I think it was just because the American Psycho analogy had been placed in my head,
Right.
that I was like, well, okay, this is not going to work for me.
Yeah, I think we had a few of those moments throughout Daredevil season 1 and 2, actually, that we were kind of calling out in the episodes as to what's the one in this episode that's going to make us almost want to throw up because it's so violent. This was that for me. Yeah, I'll definitely say I was looking away from the screen a bit as the hammer came down for the second or third time. Yeah, I think this was pretty brutal for me, to be honest.
It was definitely brutal for me, but it did kind of feel necessary because I think we've seen glimpses of Harold's nature, and I think this really kind of cements it that, he is uncompromising and he is looking out for himself. I think for me, part of this seemed to suggest something that we had talked about previously, that, maybe Harold does actually want to escape the Hand.
Yeah.
There was a slight element of desperation. I think it also then, a bit like you were saying, Derek, about the Ward's temperament, he's gotten it from his father. It reflects quite nicely with the ending, with how Ward deals with his violence and what he's doing. And I suppose we'll probably come on to that.
We will definitely come on to that.
But so I kind of felt it was necessary. I mean, we've seen many like gangster films where you would have heard take out the teeth, strip the fingerprints and all this, mutilate the body. He's kind of doing what those steps in a sense. But it's not for the faint-hearted. It's fairly graphic. And I mean, there is an attempt to put a lightness around it as well by the blaseness with which Harold, to an extent, goes about doing it. So I definitely kind of understand that as well.
I think we finally got that question answered about whether he was hiding the Iron Fist from Madame Gao or whether he was hiding him in his back pocket to try and get himself away from Madame Gao. It does feel like Harold was really excited to have the Iron Fist to take on Madame Gao in the Hand. That would finally release him from this. It was like as if he was trying to protect himself, because these guys from the Hand were coming over to try and kidnap him and get Danny Rand. And he says he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know who he is. He didn't have any discussions with him. So that question's finally put to bed, as also is Harold.
100%.
Absolutely.
Anything else about Harold, Chris?
Yeah. Okay. So as you said, this kind of this brings up a lot of our questions in terms of the Harold's usage in this show and where this was all going, especially in his involvement with the Hand. One thing I do want to say now is that the usage of Harold or the Meachums in this series, for me, has been better than it was in the comics in an origin story perspective. It was short order, very quick. Especially the Harold piece in the comic books, and I'm kind of referring to the Immortal Iron Fist run. But for me, this was a great piece because what it did was it showed he's very self-centered. So it's showing why he was so quick to cut off his own finger to spite his face, almost, in terms of like he was so quick to fix a small issue because he believed that he could one up or get an up. He could become more than he was right now. So he's already alive after being brought back from the dead once, and he's living a life where he shouldn't be living a life.
Yeah.
So he's now like, okay, how can I use Danny?
But he's absolutely not going to give up that life for anything. Is also,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My two kind of last little mini points in this really are in the fight. I loved again how Danny disables the firearm, like we saw in episode 1. Sort of almost he does his martial arts move, and as he's kind of landing, he's unclipping the rounds from the gun, and just to disable the firearm. I thought that was really, really clever.
Yeah.
And
This
I,
must
and
have been part of the training in Kunlun, was how to dismantle firearms, because I presume there wasn't a shooting
well,
range
maybe,
there.
but I just think that's really, really clever.
It is.
Then the other thing that just kind of made me slightly laugh, actually, was as Ward is putting the bodies of these two operatives, one into the boot, which he's kind of like forcing in, but it was the moment where he's dragging the feet from one side of the car, and you just see the head on the other side of the car disappear onto the back seat. And you hear the grunting and the groaning and the effort of Ward trying to pull, I presume it's the bigger of the two operatives, onto the back seat. I found that quite funny.
It was.
I found that I had a little chuckle. I just thought the image of it, the way the camera was set, just seeing this head disappear onto the back seat with all the effort that Ward is doing was really quite funny.
It was like a very, very dark Mr. Bean moment.
It was, absolutely.
Yeah, I like
it
that.
really was.
I like that. Well, let's get on to one other point. There is a level in Rand Enterprises in between all of the other levels, so we're going to separate the two Meachams with level 13. Our second last point about the episode. This is the explanation that we've been looking for why the heroin dealers that we saw in episode 5, why they were outside Rand Enterprises and why they were going in. Madame Gao has set up shop on level 13 of Rand Enterprises. Quite interesting. We do get to see one of the heroin dealers, Sophie, I think it was, the English heroin dealer, who is also working for Madame Gao now, and working very much under duress as Danny goes down and talks to her.
For me, first of all, how Danny got down there was freaking cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
my.
very cool.
I actually wanted to see more of it. I wanted to see like him almost doing a Captain America while sliding down and sparks sparking from his fist.
I like that he starts it off by going, "This is gonna hurt." So despite the fact that he has an iron fist, he knows that a hand sliding down metal is gonna hurt regardless, right?
Exactly. And I was kind of almost hoping to see more of it. I was like wanting to see or like just something like kind of him blowing on his fist when he landed, like
Right.
kind of like something like that to make a bit light of the situation.
It looked pretty cool though. It must
It looked
admit.
amazing. Yeah. I just wanted to see sparks.
If he had done that, then Madame Gao really would have hurt him on top of the lift, and her pointy cane might have gone rocketing through the roof of the lift.
Absolutely.
Do you think she would have looked up? She knows she's just gone and provoked Danny, and she goes down to her secret level 13 area. She hears a thud on her way down. Do you think she go, did the immortal Iron Fist, who we know has super or human powers, potentially just jump on the roof? No, it couldn't be.
I just think she's hugely cocky and doesn't care at all. She's just threatened him. She's just said, "I've been around long enough to see many, many people like you come and go." She says she knows all of his friends. She calls out the fact that she knows Colleen Wing. So that's a nice threat there, that if we don't get to you, remember, you have friends that we could go after. I think she just doesn't care. If it is him or if it isn't him, it doesn't really matter. It's just a bump. She can take care of whatever the hell it is, you know. There's a couple of nice call-outs there from Madame Gao in these scenes where we finally see that she has taken over Wilson Fisk's operation in Hell's Kitchen. She references the fact that the Russians are going to be running this heroin, the Dogs of Hell, who are the other biker gang from Daredevil Season 2. They're going to be running the drugs for her. And she goes, "They're working for me." These aren't like they were in Season 1 of Daredevil. These aren't just other partners in the industry. Madame Gao now controls the whole thing because Wilson Fisk has been sent to prison.
That was great. I mean, just her comeback with Sophia, the lady on the 13th floor, and just saying, you know, you need to remind them they are not our partners. They work for us. And I think that just kind of comes back to just the supreme confidence that she has, presumably in her own ability, given what we saw at the end of the great duel between Iron Fist and the Hand. But I mean, I kind of have a feeling that she does know that Danny Rand is trailing her. I mean, just the way she looks up and she looks at her henchman, there's kind of a knowing glance, and whether she has a bit of a spidey sense, because again, in the room, she has a feeling. So
Ooh, is she Madam Web?
she could be. Ooh. But like, I love the supreme confidence of her in this. I mean, even to the fact that, Dany keeps calling out about what do you know about my father, and she doesn't say anything. She knows that is an absolute bait point for him. Mm-hmm. She doesn't reveal any more about how she knows his dad, even though he keeps repeatedly asking her. Even with the feng shui jab, it's just a jab.
Yeah.
It's like she's poking him all the time. I just find that really, really great.
Oh, she's great.
And then you just see this frail looking lady with her cane, and the way she walks, the whole mannerism of Madame Gao just is fantastic. Yeah. I think. I can't stop talking about Madame Gao.
She is great, but it does lead on to the other point of the episode, obviously, that Colleen and Dany, along with the Hatchet Men that we saw Dany have that wonderful hallway fight sequence with, they all team up together to go after the Hand to get back Radovan the Chemist from Rand's own warehouses, which are now under the operation by the Hand. So some nice scenes in here as well, some nice fight sequences in here. But the big reveal that from Radovan as to where Dany's next mission takes him is to the same place where his family were travelling to 15 years before, when Dany disappeared and went to Kunlun. So all coming full circle here. We still haven't seen our flashback to Kunlun that we were expecting. Maybe we're never going to see our flashback to Kunlun. Maybe we're going to have Dany travel to Anjou and pick up the trail that way.
That would be very cool if he takes a trip to Anjou. Definitely. If that's our way into Kunlun, that's great. That's really good. I like the intrigue that it brings. Again, it's more questions about his, Dany's family, mm-hmm. and what they were doing, traveling 15 years ago. What was the purpose of that? Certainly that Madame Gao knows Wayland. So like, this is really interesting. I mean, just coming back to the fight in the warehouse, I love that team up, actually. I really like the lift opening up, and there was Hai King Yang just with his arms crossed as his boys go out on the attack.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really good.
Yeah,
and
they're
cool
holstered hatchets under the coat.
And of course, Radovan finally snuffs it because of secondary infections.
I want to jump back slightly
mm-hmm.
to the point you mentioned on what Gao said, right? In this episode, she reconfirms that there's been previous Iron Fists, etc. And she's pushing that potentially the Rands were involved and were going towards the Tibet, towards potentially Kunlun, or, well, we now know where they were going was the secondary warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
Could it be that Dany has been destined to become an Iron Fist because his father was one?
Maybe
it could be an
interesting one.
Could it be that there was a previous an Orson Rand, which is a character from the Iron Fist, the Mortal Iron Fist series as well?
Mm-hmm.
Could he be an Iron Fist as well? Could this be kind of, they're starting to build the greater lore that is there already? There was so much in this level 13 scene that I'm sorry, I'm just trying to jump through. One was that, could they be pulling this in, which we will get in the actual flashback scenes? We may get previous flashbacks to other Iron Fists, and more importantly, potentially to Dany's father. Then Madame Gao, okay, has been mentioning Daredevil, and she mentions Luke Cage.
Yeah.
In this episode as well. There's another Defender she doesn't mention.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
When we think about it, Jessica has had no involvement with the Hand
mm-hmm.
that we are aware of.
Yeah.
So she is their surprise weapon.
That's very true. Yeah. Yeah. Remember, Luke Cage not only does he have unbreakable skin, but he was all over the newspapers in Harlem after his adventures in Harlem in Luke Cage season 1. So it's very likely she would know about the man with unbreakable skin. That is a local hero. It's obviously she knows who Daredevil is because she's gone up against him. But yeah, there's no reason why she would know about Jessica. She wasn't involved in any of the adventures that Luke Cage went through. The explanation, I think, for what happened during Jessica Jones was kind of played off by the media as just an excuse for why she killed a former boyfriend. I think that's what we see in Luke Cage. A little bit of that. So there's no particular reason why she would be aware of it. But yeah, she's definitely another powered individual that Madame Gao will potentially face coming up in the Defenders.
Yeah, and then kind of this leads me to my kind of the secondary point on this. The more that we find out about the Hand in this series, as well as in previous series, I am struggling to understand the relationship of what the Hand is and what the Iron Fist / Kunlun is to the Hand.
They just don't like drugs, Chris.
Drugs are bad. I think it was just where I'm trying to go with this is that the Iron Fist is the ultimate weapon against the Hand.
Yeah.
In the comic books, the Hand have always been this ninja group, and the Iron Fist and Kunlun has been that kind of Tibetan Shaolin styled kind of city, monks, warrior monks, etc.
But we did see a much more mystical side of the Hand in season 2 of Daredevil, definitely.
Exactly. So I'm starting to wonder where they're going with this. So the thing what I'm trying to say is I'm struggling to understand who the Hand are and what the relationship of the Kunlun is to that. And like we know that the Hand is selling drugs to support their other nefarious ninja-based activities, nighttime activities, and we know that the Iron Fist is the sworn enemy. So I'm hoping we get a more distinct explanation of this now.
Yeah,
especially in how they previously interacted. And then I know we'll probably I will get a couple of answers, and then more obviously when the Defenders series launches. I think what I'm just more curious about is they keep teasing it, and of course, just being the nerd that I am, I have certain expectations in my head from what the Hand is in the comic books.
Right.
And I think they're deviating from that. So I think it confuses parts of me where I'm like, that's something I'm always going to do. I know when they do, when I go see Spider-Man Homecoming, I'm going to have a thing in my head going, wait, the Vulture is not like that. And of course, we have to remember, I have to step back, and this is a different interpretation. I don't think I'm a purist. I need an explanation at this point. There's too many questions for me.
No, I totally understand. I think the way the shows are handling the Hand, if that's a good way to put it, is that as each character interacts with them, so as Elektra interacted with the Hand, she learned some things about them that we didn't know before as the audience. As Daredevil interacted with them, he learned things about them, but they were each of them starting from scratch as characters. With Danny now learning about the Hand outside of what he's been taught in Kunlun, which we don't know. All he knows was that he was standing at the gates in case the Hand attacked. They're an ancient organization. They're not just drug runners. Obviously, there must be something else if they've been going on for thousands of years. It's not just that they sold heroin for all that time. That seems like a really unusual thing to keep you going for thousands of years. But he's just learning about them slowly. But I understand the kind of frustration as well. If you've got a big bad like this that's gone on effectively for 3 of the 5 seasons that we've been watching these shows, and we still don't know much about them. All we know is that Madame Gao seems to control a lot of it, but most of it is just selling drugs that Madame Gao's in control of.
Yeah, I mean, I think season 1 of Daredevil introduced Madame Gao as a partner, and, were they really explicit about her being the Hand? We spotted the steel serpent symbol on the drug run, but that was more of a partner with Wilson Fisk. I suppose really it's introducing that mystical element as was into this world through, I think at the time we said, effectively a front type of operation, which was drug running and so on, in order so that they have money to buy land and all that we see then in season 2 as well with Wilson Fisk.
Yeah.
Then we get more of the mystical elements with Elektra and Daredevil. Yeah. So it starts to build. I think definitely with then Iron Fist, we know that this is at least fully mystical, but I do agree with you, Chris, in that we still don't really know why Danny Rand left Kunlun. Ultimately, his teachings, his training there would be to say that he is the protector of Kunlun from the Hand, or from attackers of the mystical city. We still don't know why he came to New York. except to find out more about the death of his parents or the plane crash and what happened. But I'm wondering, is there the thing that he's like, I'm the sworn enemy of the Hand, but the Hand, I'm not fighting the Hand because they're not attacking the city. Therefore, he's come out of that to find them, to attack them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Except that he didn't know they were in New York because he gets really surprised by that idea.
No, exactly.
But doesn't it suck even more that he came to New York to find out about the history of his family, and now he's being sent back to Anjou, which was probably a bit closer. It was probably a walk down the hill from Kunlun.
Yeah, so I think we definitely need to see more in relation to Danny and the Hand's relationship. And I think it's definitely going to connect him more with Stick and Stone and just those scenes that we saw in Daredevil season 2.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to just get some more on that Kunlun Danny Rand interface.
Yeah.
I suppose as well, as I say, if they do attack Kunlun, or if there is something along those lines, I think as we've said previously, that could be a modification of Hydra going after the mystical city from the Immortal Iron Fist.
Absolutely.
And they've just replaced that with the Hand as that organization that is attacking it in relation to the power that it can hold in terms of the molten heart of Shou-Lao. But we also need to have more on Shou-Lao.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that was a good diversion to break up the two Meacham storylines, which were obviously the main storylines of the episode. On to our final point, Ward Meacham. Chris, you mentioned in the last episode, you were wondering, this guy's gone absolutely crazy, took a bit of heroin, took loads of drugs, was going to his lowest low, and you couldn't go any lower. He can, it turns out. He can kill his own father and throw him in the lake.
Yeah, don't cancel his vacation.
Absolutely.
No, or steal his money.
Uh-huh.
21 million or 21 billion, I wasn't sure. I need to double check my zeros. But yeah, no, look, they did this. We talked about it in the last episode. I didn't know how far they would take this.
Uh-huh.
And they did. They took this, they've created this, the new monster, Frankenstein's monster, which I love the storyline behind that, which is just, it's a great telling that Frankenstein was Harold and now Ward is the monster and Harold created him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that especially the psychotic break on his face over this episode, slowly becoming more twisted and crazy. And I think we did also question what they were going to do with this character. I think it was the last episode and some of the previous ones. Is he going to be a bad? Is he going to be a good? Is he going to have a redemption story?
Mm-hmm.
Where are they going with this? Okay, nope, they're just making him out to be he's a crazy Meacham.
Yeah.
Big
And I
time.
love it.
Yeah.
I love the way they did this.
This is big for me as the reveal in episode 7 of Luke Cage that the big bad for Luke Cage was Mariah Dillard. It was not Cottonmouth. It's that big a reveal. I thought, David Wenham playing Harold Meacham in this show, he was going to be the big bad. And then Ward Meacham comes along. He's put upon son, and now he is the big bad for the show. He's just slaughtered his own father in cold blood because he had no other option in his mind. He was being completely controlled by him for his entire life, and the only option he had set up for himself, which was embezzle money from the company and run away with it, his father took that away because his father's been watching him. So this is our big bad for the show. This is the person we should have been keeping our eye on, from the Weasley scumbag CEO in episode 1 to this sudden murderer with a smile on his face driving away after planting his father's body in a lake. This is the big bad for the show.
And the Weasley kid that kicks Danny in the nuts and, is a bit of an arse, really. I mean, yeah, it kind of links into the Russian doll theory that we were saying. We were suddenly going, hang on, is Meacham the big bad? Is Madame Gao the big bad? Is it Davos that's the big bad? And here we see, Harold has become expendable. But not at the hands of Iron Fist, not at the hands of Madame Gao, or of his own son, Ward. I thought his disintegration in this episode was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And it kind of being topped off with that wry smile is fantastic. It really was. I think Ward has me able to both chuckle at him getting a body into the backseat of a car, gasp at the fact that he's just stabbing his father in the stomach, and also shouting at him because he's acting as like such a dick. He's got me doing all these things either just in this episode or over the series so far. Yeah. And it's a great character, for that just diversity and range of just how nutty he is. I really like it, and it's topped off with just like the fact that he's got that long hair that when slicked back, he is, you know, top dollar, top floor executive. But as soon as he gets stressed, I mean, it just starts to fray as well, and you've got these straggly bits of her falling down, looking greasy, really good. And I think him killing Harold, absolute great moment and shock moment for this episode and for the show so far. I thought it was really good. I'd love to know what that wry smile means. Is it just the fact that, you know,
final relief that his father's gone?
Yeah, final relief, or that he's got something else whirring through his brain at the moment. And I mean, the other thing is, how many bodies are in that lake? Again, him wading through that, kind of like stomping on the bodies to try and sink them down. Again, a great little physical kind of nuance to the scene. He's such a good actor as Tom Pelfroy in this role. I've really enjoyed him, and I think, as you said, Chris, before, what he's brought to the Meachums as this other side in Danny's life, it's gone beyond it being just simply that Harold was responsible for the plane going down. And we don't know that in this story yet. It could be the case, or it could be another reason. You know, they have taken and changed up the Meachums, and for the better, I think, as you say. I mean, in the Immortal Iron Fist, the Meachums are almost treated as a sidebar kind of story to an extent, but here we see them in the flesh, and I think Ward Meachum is fantastic.
And isn't Ward Joy's uncle in the comic books as well? He's Harold's brother in the comics, so a slightly different character as well. So
yeah, I mean, at least he doesn't have to say to Joy now that her father's alive.
That's true.
Yeah, it's true. The silver lining.
Yeah.
But what a day for Harold to not bring Kyle to the office, his personal assistant. You know?
Well, maybe he did, and that's where the other body is. Like, that's why he's stomping.
Poor Kyle. Yeah.
I really want to give a huge shout out to Tom Pelfrey on this.
Mm-hmm.
For me, he was a complete unknown. I know some people may know him from Banshee,
right?
But I've never watched it, so I can't attest to his acting skills in that. So he was an unknown for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, okay, we've discussed the actor's skill in showing that kind of crazy twitch and that breaking point of Ward and what he was going through.
Yeah.
But this, for me, was like a standout performance, like hands down.
Yeah.
Just the descent into madness.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it was in the last episode, or again, previous episode, we discussed, could Ward work for the Hand at some point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Could he go towards the Hand? This could be the point. Harold has created a monster, and Ward will go and try and work for his father's captors because he hates them.
Absolutely, and especially now that he's been pulled out of Rand Enterprises along with Joy. So he's now been pushed out by the board along with Danny and Joy. The board are now taking over the company. So he's going to go back having lost all of his money because his father stole it from him.
Didn't put it back
before he killed him. And yeah, could this push him over the edge even further? So there is a really touching scene with him, which I don't think you guys have mentioned, that scene with Joy where she tries to convince him to go and get help. And he finally gives in and I'm going to have to go and do it. This is why he's on the run. This is why he's taking his money and going off on holiday, is because Joy has convinced him, you need to get out of here or else you're going to do something crazy. And that is what turns into the breaking point. That's where his father pulls him back. So, but I thought the scene between Joy and Ward again was quite a touching scene between the two of them, where he finally is admitting, I just can't do this anymore. There's nothing keeping me here, and I'm not able to be in control of my own life. And I can't even tell my sister what's going on because I've never told her that her father's been alive for 12 years, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, one of the other things, do you think we'll see zombie Harold? Is there still a bit of the Hand's hocus pocus in his bloodstream?
You know, this is a really interesting point. When you put this in the notes for our episode, I wasn't thinking about it. I was kind of going, yeah, that's probably not going to happen. But you know what? This is a character who is brought back to life by the Hand. We've never seen what happens when they get killed, except for one character that I can think of, which was a ninja in Daredevil called Nobu. He came back repeatedly until a certain man called Stick took off his head. So we didn't see a headless version of Harold Meacham here. We could, in fact, see him come back from the dead.
Exactly. Zombie Jesus Harold Meacham.
He kind of was already zombie for the last 12 years, technically. He did die.
That is true.
And came back to life. So it's very possible we could see him die and come back to life. So yeah, a fantastic closer to the arc so far for Ward. I'm really interested to see what happens to him in future. Yeah,
just before we kind of end on our discussions about Ward, I really want to kind of, again, I'm really interested to see where they take this as a character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind if he's a big bad for the remainder of the season, or if potentially he's a big bad for Defenders, because we've talked about maybe they bring back one of the bads for each of the characters to kind of have them face off against their nemesis or nemesi or nemesises, and then maybe that like Jessica Jones takes Ward and Luke Cage takes I don't know, Elektra, for example, and you know, that's how they learn that they need to find each other's strengths and use each other's strengths to defend or defeat the other people. You know where I'm all going with this.
Absolutely.
I would actually really enjoy seeing Ward as potentially that, because what's the difference between running a multi-million-dollar corporation or running a multi-million-dollar heroin operation for the Hand? While slightly crazy.
Absolutely.
Where I'm also, the reminder this has got me, Jerome from Gotham.
Uh-huh.
This is a slight reminder for me of this
character
and how the portrayal of that descent into full-on craziness is perhaps going, and where they could take it in an interesting manner. I'll let all of our friends who are not sure what I'm talking about go over to Gotham TV Podcast, where you can hear these two beautiful desert tones without me, because I'm Marvel through and through.
Thanks for the plug, Chris.
No problem. I'm here to help anytime. That's €5. Every time I mention the Father podcast, you have to pay me.
We don't pay you for this one, so why not?
Exactly. I do it for the love. But no, I think that's another portrayal where we've seen a character go from not too weird to full on crazy, and I'd love to see them take that direction with Ward.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we might see that a bit more in the in Gotham as well.
Yeah.
I think that's enough on our top 5 points for the episode. I think we need to get into. Is there a couple of notes?
I think so.
I know we have one big note which we finally resolved as to whether Meacham was drinking kale or not.
Yeah, it's not kale. It's me. The juice, it certainly isn't pulped up kale. It's Silybum marinium or milk thistle, which is good for the liver, apparently, but not good for the stomach with a knife being thrust into it repeatedly. This is the juice, the potion, if you will, that Harold is swigging back. It's no whiskey watch, but we've managed to get it tied down here.
Silybum marionum. Interesting. My one for this episode was about Karen Page. A nice little call out that Karen Page of the Bulletin was interested in the story. She's also the writer of the article that Joy is reading about Danny. So it sounds like Karen Page could be brought in quite easily and would know who Danny Rand is very quickly, because she's been writing stories about him over in the Bulletin. Still haven't gotten Deborah Amwal on the show just yet, but there's absolutely a possibility at the end of this whole series that she runs up with paper and pen in hand and says, Danny, can I have your story to write my Pulitzer Prize winning book or something?
Well, on that note, there was a lovely one that it's not exactly a tattoo, as Danny says to Colleen.
Mm-hmm.
When is he going to start telling exactly that? Oh, no. I just got branded when I tried to fight a dragon and won. Come on. I just want to hear him say that line. Oh, yeah, no, it's not a tattoo. It was a brand. I fought a dragon and pulled out his beating heart, and this is what I got. I'm seriously waiting for that line. Or something along attest to that, because that would be amazing.
But remember, kids, he was trying to get with Colleen Wing, so maybe that story is the one that might have made her go, actually, just get out, Danny. I don't really believe any of this stuff. Get out. So, yeah, fair choice there, Danny. That's it for the notes and points for the episode.
It is from my side, yeah.
It certainly is.
So, John, do you defend this episode of Iron Fist, Season 1, Episode 7, Felling Tree with Roots?
Oh, I juicy do. This, I would give 4.5 dental hammers out of 5. I really enjoyed this episode. I just thought it was really fast-paced. I thought from the building of the relationship between Danny and Colleen through to the disintegration of that relationship and the murder of Harold by Ward. Really, really good. Very bold. I enjoyed this kind of ramping up of the physical violence in this. For me, I thought it put the likes of the Hand into the same league as we had seen them in season 2 of Daredevil.
Right.
It felt consistent in that sense. And of course, we were introduced to both Level 13 and Bakuto, this mysterious mentor of Colleen's, and just asking some intriguing questions over Colleen, even as well as Bakuto. So for me, this episode had thrills, spills, family troubles, and, a lot of intrigue. So really good. And of course, it had Mojo in the dojo. Chris, do you defend this episode of Iron Fist?
I do defend this episode. I 100% do. There was elements where I was, as I already talked about, I was like, oh, really? This is where you're going with it? There was elements where, so obviously, like we talked about the violence, and I was very much... Okay, it was great use, and we talked how that violence worked in Daredevil season 1, and there was gut-wrenching pieces, but because of previous comments, I can't get this American Psycho piece out of my head. And I think this was just more of my fault versus the show's fault, so I can't hold that against it. But the piece that's kind of forming more and more in my head is, for every one question we get answered, 5 to 10 more get placed into on top of my head, and I'm like, no. Okay, just give me one episode where you answer 20 for me, and then just give me 1 or 2 extra.
This show is Hydra.
Yes, exactly. Cut one off and new 4 will rise. But basically, yes. No, look, we had the mysterious mentor. I want to know where Bakuto is there, what he is. Is he Davos? Is he not? The dojo scene. Again, I'm a purist, so I think that's why I was a bit... But I like that they're taking this in a new direction, and I can actually understand that. And I think it's good. So yes, I do defend it. It's just they need to... They need to start wrapping some storylines up if they're going to do what a normal Netflix show does, where they will answer... they'll start chapter 2, arc 2 of it now. And that's all I think I need.
I think to that point, Arc 2 is going to be the other 6 episodes of the series. We are at the halfway point. Well, halfway through this episode was the halfway point, but yeah, we are getting there. We are on the other side of the season. Okay,
so on my ramblings, Derek, do you defend this episode of Iron Fist?
I absolutely defend this episode. Everything hangs on Tom Pelphrey's performance as Ward in this episode. If he had been a bad actor, if he couldn't pull off all the scenes that he has in this episode, it just wouldn't have worked. There's also some great other scenes, obviously, with Colleen Wing. And Danny, they really enjoyed those scenes between the two of them, because it does show how the two of them have grown together over time. This is the high point for the season so far for me, really. It's got everything in it. It's got Madame Gao. And I'm saying that after the episode that I thought I wanted for the season, which was last episode, which was all the fight scenes for an entire episode. So this is exactly the culmination of all of these characters. So I'm really looking forward to seeing episode 8, and it's an absolute defend for me.
Yeah, so with that, I think it's on to our feedback.
Yeah, our first piece of feedback comes from our Facebook group over at facebook.com/groups/Defenders TV podcast. Jeff Childs says, that was amazing watching Ward become unhinged. Yeah, definitely one of my favourite things about this episode.
Absolutely, really great to see. Claire Payne also says, Harold smashing the faces of the two henchmen was gruesome. I did feel for Ward when Harold told him to dump the bodies. Well done, Colleen, for breaking Danny's oath of chastity. Really interesting introduction of Bakuto. I found it really interesting when she said, you will always come first to me. I hope this doesn't ruin their romance. Absolutely. Will it ruin their romance? Or is it that Colleen is, a double agent of some description?
Yeah.
Really interesting. But certainly I think the gruesomeness of this episode is echoed from a comment by Jim Carrey as well. Yeah, gruesome, brutal, barbaric. Were any of the other Netflix series this extreme except in fight revenge context? Absolutely. I could only equate it to season 2 of Daredevil with some of the punishment and violence of the Punisher.
Yeah.
But again, I suppose that's in a revenge context, but maybe it's a cleanup operation by Harold, and is Ward's also revenge to some extent.
Absolutely.
It's the psychological toll that has been taken on Ward by dealing with his father's particular way of fatherhood, but also just keeping things secret from the one person left in the family that he cares for, which is Joy. But certainly very brutal, Jim. Yeah,
I think I mentioned in the episode just a couple of the other, a couple of moments during Daredevil season 2 that we had. We had mentioned there was some real brutality in that, but yeah, this is definitely up there with those episodes. Rebecca Brodeur says, love the male Meachums and their effed up relationship. Yeah, totally. This episode was all about the Meachums. And finally, Robert Phillips says, I remember it took just a few minutes to revive the Hand members in Daredevil season 2. Could Harold be coming back to life more slowly? Yeah, that's echoing kind of our thoughts in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope that he returns to add a bit of spice. I can imagine the conversation now as he shows up on the top floor of Rand Enterprises with Joy and Ward both there. A difficult conversation, I think, would lie ahead if Harold comes back. But yeah, really good point there from Robert. Thank you so much for all the feedback. As always, it's great to have your feedback and thoughts. And if you have any kind of points of discussion or comments on the podcast, on any episode of Iron Fist or the series so far, you are more than welcome to leave an email at feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, or go onto our website and leave a voicemail. Just go to defenderstvpodcast.com, leave a 90-second voicemail there.
And remember, our competition is still open, so if you do send us a voicemail for any of our future episodes, you will be entering into the competition to win a marvellous Marvel prize at the end of our Iron Fist coverage.
And don't forget to go vote in our poll. In what name would we call all of you defenders? Are you defendees? Are you defendettes? Well, let us know. Vote in the poll, and we'll announce it hopefully in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming and listening to this episode. We'll call them listeners for the moment. We'll be back on Friday, the 7th of April, with our review of Season 1, Episode 8, The Blessing of Many Fractures. The reason why I wanted to say this one is because it is directed by Kevin Tancherone, the brother of Marissa Tancherone, who is one of my favourite people in the world because she's the showrunner for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., along with Joss Whedon's brother Jed. So really excited to see Kevin Tancherone jump over from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He's done a number of episodes over there of my favourite show on TV, pretty much. So I'm excited to see what he does in the Marvel Netflix universe with Iron Fist. And considering one of the asks going into this season was that Phil Coulson would meet Danny Rand at some point during the season, is that a possibility in the next episode? Will we get a cameo from Phil Coulson of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. crossing over with Danny Rand?
Who knows, but if we do, hear our thoughts and listen to us over at defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes or any other good podcast catcher. So I think with that, it's hammer time, and thank you so much again, as always, for listening, and we will speak with you next time.
Ta-ra for now.
Just keep doing what you're doing. I'll be in contact.
Bye.